Okay, so hello and welcome to iTenv Healthcare Solutions webinar, Opening the Door to Closing the Order Loop in NextGen. My name is Chelsea Grover and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for iTenv. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. We'll send out a copy of the slides along with the recording within the next week. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with iTenv, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare, and we're passionate about providing solutions for healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen, and we also have two add-on productivity solutions for NextGen, ChartGuard and Refund Manager. Speaking of ChartGuard, I wanted to mention an upcoming demo of that product on January 31st. ChartGuard enables you to print, view, or electronically access your patient charts and your practice's appointment book, even when your EHR system fails or your network is down. It integrates in with your NextGen healthcare system for an easy user experience and automatically generates customized printable copies of your clinical charts for the next several days, along with a copy of your appointment book, and refreshes your archive every night. You can register for that website on our Events and Education section, or wait until I send out an invitation later this month. Okay, so back to today's webinar on order functionality in NextGen. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. And again, I wanted to mention that the audio now is all going to be coming throughout your phone or your speakers, however you called in. So that email that I mentioned earlier about connecting in with speakers or headset is no longer necessary. We've made a change to that audio plan. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Cindy Kincaid is Vice President of Client Solutions, and Lindsay Lanning is our Healthcare Compliance Consultant at iTenv. Also, Lexi DePasquale, Consultant at iTenv, did the recorded demo that we spoke about earlier. Okay, so Cindy, the webinar is all yours. Take it away.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, well, first of all, what I wanted to talk about is opening the door to closing the order loop in NextGen. I think anyone that has used NextGen for years has noticed that when you have an order that is not going through an interface, it can be some challenges, and we're going to talk about that today and take you through the new and different options in 5984, as well as these were introduced in UD3. So let's kind of go down and let's move on to the webinar. So what is closing the loop? Well, the basic concept is closing the loop means that the person who placed an order gets a report or a status on the outcome. It's as simple as that. The order goes out, an action occurs, and a report comes back to the person who issued the order. You want to know that it's been taken care of. And why should the loop be closed? Well, obviously, you want to know that it was taken care of. You want to confirm appropriate care or action was administered and carried out. Eliminates anyone falling through the cracks. You ask someone to do something, particularly if it's not interfaced, and then how do you know that they actually complied with that or did that? No one is left guessing, and it improves the quality measure tracking and performance of the practice, and I think it's a patient safety issue. So it's always been something that's been high on a lot of our clients' minds as we've worked with them. So why wasn't the loop being closed? Well, previously in NextGen, when an order was lacking an interface. So if you were placing something to an outside radiologist, mammography in many cases, or something that the equipment was not housed in your location and you didn't have an interface to send the order, there was no easy way to connect the results to the original order. These would come back to you scanned, or they would come back to you, imported into ICS in some fashion, into a folder or scanned. But regardless, they were coming back and they needed to be filed. And the only way to do that was to manually go back to the order, put in the date, and manually do this, and people just didn't do it. It was too time consuming and it took too long. So therefore, all these orders were left outstanding from a system perspective. So NextGen has made it easier to close the loop. I'm going to use the term easier because I still think that, obviously there's some effort involved and you have to be careful, but they've added functionality that now allows the end user a more efficient way to close the loop on outstanding orders that lack an interface. The key word here is lacking an interface. So now clinicians and office staff can link the scanned results to the order itself, either through document management or the provider approval queue. So depending on who you want to perform this function, they've added two methodologies enabling you to do that. There is some required setup to doing this, and we'll talk a little bit about this, and then we'll also be looking at this a little bit more as we go through the presentation. So first of all, you have to perform the linking of document management images to orders in order to set up the applicable preferences. You have to tell it that you're going to do this. Now, how you do this is you're going to need to navigate to both practice preferences and document management master files in file maintenance. So the first we're going to talk about is what you need to do in practice preferences. Well, you'll need to navigate to file maintenance, practice preferences, order module, and the all tab. And then under the orders and results linking section, you will select the default order type to display when selecting orders to link to a scanned document. So for example, a diagnostic radiology lab orders and referrals. The default view, what you're setting up now, is going to be the most common type of documents you receive. So you want to, again, you have the options to change this later, but you want to select your view based on the most common methodology for the documents that you're receiving. Under the orders results linking section, the user would select the default source for each order type, diagnostic radiology, lab orders, and referrals. And this is going to be a really important part of setting this up. And this is probably one of the most complicated areas of this to explain, even though it seems ridiculously simple. It actually takes some thought process as you're doing it. So first of all, your default source can either be the KBM or orders module with the exception of the referrals. And referrals are only option is KBM. And since referrals are only supported in the NextGen KBM system, the system automatically defaults this view for you. Now, again, keep in mind, we're only doing our most common. There are options based on document type that you can change later. But the most important thing to keep in mind here is where are you placing the order? Again, referrals, you can only do it from the KBM. But where is the order being placed? And that will indicate how you want to set these up. So under the orders results linking section, the user will need to select how the KBM order status will display for scanned documents after they are linked. And you have two basic choices, completed and result received. Now, I want to point out that there's a note that this only applies when you're completing KBM orders. If you're ordering from the order module, particularly when you're thinking about diagnostics, if you're ordering from the orders module, it is going to say result received. You cannot change that. And this was, when we were first playing with this was an area that I even got caught up on, is like, why is it still saying result received? The basic choice is it only impacts you when you are working on any orders that are done in the KBM. And any order process in the order module will always say have a result received. So we've got an example here of the full screen. And what you want to look at here is that you'll just see that you've got your default view, and that's your diagnostic radiology with the drop-down box, and you can make your changes to the diagnostic, lab, or referrals. And then on the other side, you can do your KBM order status update upon sign-off, and again, you can see the options that you have there. And this is a base screen that you'll have to set up as for our practice preferences. So what does this do? By configuring the default source and default view, when the user goes to link these scanned documents to the order, the radio buttons will be pre-selected based on your choices. It actually saves time for the end user. So as you can see, when you go into each of the individual documents, you have the ability to see the various document types, and it will default based on your setup and configuration here. Now, after we have completed the practice preferences, you now have some required setup in the DM file, document maintenance, file maintenance. So you navigate to this by going File Maintenance, System, Document Management, and Document Types. And then you would need to go into your document types and indicate any document type that could have a potential order result associated with it. So again, if you've got radiology, and you can see some examples here, colonoscopy, anything that you would be getting a report back, you would go in and you would actually go in and indicate that this could possibly have a scanned image associated with it. And we've highlighted the checkbox that you would need to check for this. This is also important because it's easy to forget and overlook this step, and particularly for those groups that have a lot of document types, you will need to be able to make sure that you've done this functionality. So now that we've got all the setup and we've got everything completed, let's talk about document management and how it's going to work in this particular side of the system. So when a user receives the result and scans the document, or it is automatically imported into a folder to be filed into document management, basically you will need to follow this next process. You're going to link a result. So once you've done that, you will select the document type that has been set up as a potential order result. Again, you'll want to make sure that you've had those set up in your document maintenance. The user will then find an appropriate order in the grid under the Link tab and click Complete or Link. Now, once again, I want to reemphasize, it shows Complete for KBM orders and Link for the Orders module. After clicking Complete Link, the user will still need to file the remaining documents in it to save. So you may have a multi-page document, and what you would do is once you've established that you want to link it or you want to complete it, you will then need to file the remaining documents and the document would apply. Now, an additional functionality that you have is when filing a result, the user can select the result status. So in addition to marking this, you have some options for result status, and the user must select the status prior to completing or linking it. And once the result is filed, that option is no longer available to you. So this is helpful when you have a test that would have different statuses, such as a preliminary versus the final result. And you can indicate that it is preliminary and it can move on. There's a number of options here that you can see that NextGen has preloaded for you. Now, one of the things that's asked often is, can you unlink it? Maybe you've made a mistake, maybe you've done something incorrectly. So yes, you can unlink a scanned image from an order. The user would basically select the appropriate order in the grid under the Unlink tab and click Unlink Document Image. This can only be done for orders processed in the Orders module, not the KBM. So that's important to keep in mind. The KBM templates include, so if you're ordering from your KBM templates anywhere in My Plan, Lab Master, Diagnostic Studies, Office Procedures, any others based on specialty, or if you're doing any customization and you've used some of the NextGen fields to make it easier, keep in mind you cannot unlink if it is a KBM placed order. Now, closing the referral loop. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the referral loop must be done from either a referral template, My Plan, AP Details, Checkout template, and again, anything else that is dependent on specialty. The same workflow can be followed to close the loop on a referral order because it's always being done from the KBM. The radio button for referrals would need to be selected. And since the referrals can only be ordered through the KBM, again, they cannot be unlinked. So it's important to keep all of this in perspective. It's also important to note that this does count as a MIPS improvement activity. Now, we're going to move on to how this works in the provider approval queue. A little bit different as we go through this. In the provider approval queue, scanned images can be linked to orders in the PA queue as well. Once the results have been scanned and sent to the PA queue, the user would navigate to the EHR and open the PA queue. So your provider or anyone participating in sign-off would move there, and above the sign-off button, the user should click the Testtube icon. So this looks a little bit like the screen that we've got here. You have the Testtube icon, and it's right above the approval. And from this grid, you will follow the same workflow that we followed in the previous slides. It's just being handled from the provider side of the house or anyone in the provider approval queue, as opposed to doing this at the time the documents are being scanned. So this is really a workflow decision that you want to make within your group. So the main difference, as I said, document management is completed by the office staff, PAQ is completed by the provider. Some of the groups that I've worked with in early adoption of this functionality had the provider doing it because they felt they were the only person that was really qualified to be able to complete this properly. On the other side of the house, you have document management being completed by staff saying that this is something that's too cumbersome and too time-consuming for the provider, and they want to get it linked before the provider actually sees it and approves it. Either way, these must be signed off on, and either way, both the functionality is largely the same. It's just a matter of who do you want to do it and where do you see the greatest efficiency in your practice.
In order for a user to be able to link scanned images from document management to orders that come from the EHR, there's some configuration that has to be done by your practice. The first step in the configuration is in your practice preferences. You will go to the Orders module tab, and then the All tab within that tab. Down here at the bottom, there's a section called Order Results Linking. This will set up the default for how your practice typically places orders. So the first item here is your default view. So this default view is going to be the most common order type that your practice will receive scanned documents for. So your options here are diagnostics and radiology, lab orders, and referrals. The next section here is your order type and default source. So the default source is the most common location that the orders are placed. So for my order types of diagnostics and radiology and lab orders, I have two options. The first is your KBM, so if the users are placing orders typically through a template or through the orders module. For my last order type of referrals, the only option is KBM, as that's the only way to place a referral order in NextGen. The last section here is my KBM order status update upon sign-off. So this section is allowing you to select for each order type the wording that you want to use for that order status. So for diagnostic, lab orders, and referrals, I have the option of the order status of completed or result received. Something to note is that this only applies to orders that are placed through the KBM. Any orders that are processed in the orders module will automatically have a status of result received. So by setting up all of these defaults, you are pre-selecting some of the radio buttons that we'll see in a second when we're linking our scan documents. And it'll just make it easier for your users to find the order they're looking for faster. So once you have completed those practice preferences, the next step in configuration will be setting up your document types. So if I come into my document management master files and I select document types, I would want to find any document types that you could possibly associate an order with. So for instance, if I come into my CT scans, I'd want to check off the box for potential order result. So you are saying that items that are scanned under the document type of CT scans could possibly be an order result, and therefore you might be linking this document to an order. So you would want to go through and check off this box for each of the document types that could possibly have a result associated with it. So that concludes the configuration that you would have to do in order for your practice to be able to link scan items to orders. So to link these scanned items to orders, there are two ways that you can do this. So the first that we're going to take a look at is through document management. So in document management, you have the choice of having whoever is scanning the document link the order at that time, or you can also go back into a previously scanned document and link it to an existing order. So first, you would go through and you would scan or import or however you get your documents like you typically would. And then you want to make sure that you are selecting a document type that we had previously set up as a potential order result. So I'm going to use the document type of MRI. And then you would complete the filing information like you typically would. Down here at the bottom, you'll notice that there is an orders grid. So this is showing me any existing orders for that patient. And you'll notice that some of those preferences that we set up in practice preferences are defaulted here for us. So that just makes it a little easier to find the order that you're looking for. So I would find the order that I want to associate this image with. I would select my checkbox, and then in the bottom right here, I would select complete. So in this example, I'm looking at a KBM order, so the wording is complete. Just something to note that if the order is from the orders module, the button will say link. Once I hit complete, I'll see that that order has been removed from my list because not an order that is able to be linked to anymore. And then I would want to finish filing my document like I normally would. And then now that scanned image is associated with that order. The other option to be able to scan or to link the scanned orders to a scanned document to an order is through the PAQ. So if I come in here to the EHR and I open the PAQ, you'll see here that I have a scanned document that came through, but a scanned document has not been linked to this order yet. So in order to link it from the PAQ, I would come down here to the provider sign-off section, and underneath my notepad, I would select my orders module icon here. You'll notice that this grid looks very similar to the grid we just saw in document management. So the provider, when they're signing off on this scanned image, could come in here, check off the order that they want, and select complete, and then it will associate that scanned image with that order. You'll notice that there's also an Unlink tab. So my Unlink tab does allow me to unassociate a scanned image with an order. So if you selected the wrong image or the wrong order, then they can come in here to Unlink and select Unlink that document and image. Something to note that this only applies to orders that are processed through the orders module. You are not able to unlink a scanned image from an order if it came from the KBM. So once the scanned images are associated with orders, either through the document management or through the provider approval queue, they will then be able to, the scanned image will be able to be seen through the EHR. So one of the first places, if I look in orders management, you'll notice here I have two different examples. The first one, this was an order that came from the orders module. So you'll see here that the status was changed to result received, and the interpretation says C module. This second order is the one that we just did in the document management, and this came from KBM. So you'll see my status here is completed, and then interpretation will say C scanned document management image. So it lets me know that there is an image associated with this order. If I'm dealing with an order that was placed through the orders module, you'll notice here that order that we saw previously, it's going to have a NextGen status of signed off. And then you'll see that there's a little paperclip here that is letting me know that there's a scan image associated with this order. So if I select the paperclip, it is going to show me that scan image that I linked in document management. So then the user is able to select full screen if they want to see a larger view, and they can review that image while staying within the orders module.
Okay, so now that we've seen the recorded demo and we've taken a look at this, a couple of things I wanted to point out, particularly if you notice when it is being done through the provider approval queue, you may have noticed that there was no completed date put into the order. That is by design. That also created some confusion when we were first setting this up, but in speaking with a lot of the providers, they felt that was acceptable because of the fact that it is a scanned image and the date that it was completed may not correspond with the date that you received the scan. Because of the fact that the provider had signed off, they felt that was acceptable. But another process that we came into as we were looking at this and we were talking with others is, okay, now we've completed the loop from a very high technical perspective. So what about patient notification? Even though that's not necessarily what might be termed documentation when you are looking at closing the loop. What we thought about and what one of our other larger clients thought about was patient notification. You have to notify the patient. So we're going to talk a little bit about some options associated with that. So when you want to notify the patient, a result comes back in a document format and you've attached it to an order and it's now completed. So what next? Well, there's two options users can now consider for patient notification. First and foremost, within the order management template or provider test action, users can access the order and document the patient notified via an added checkbox. This is per order. So if there are multiple results, it's at the individual order level, and that's really important, and we're looking into perhaps some functionality down the line about if it's preliminary, if it's final, so there's a lot of conversations on this, but it's important to note that if there are multiple tests associated with an order, you must check this at the individual order level. So an example of this, and this is new functionality, you'll see that there is now a patient notified checkbox. And you can checkbox this and you can indicate how the patient was notified. So it was either via email, fax, letter, patient portal, phone call, or verbal. There was also discussions in terms of whether or not if it goes to the patient portal, is it classified as the patient was notified? And the decision was yes, but again, these are all practice decisions that you'll want to make. But this is the one further step in terms of how are you doing this and making sure the patient is notified of the results received, not just these, but this could also be anything that's coming back via an interface as well. So I don't want to associate this completely with the new functionality that NextGen calls closing the loop, but this is functionality that's been added to help you track and manage whether or not you have notified. These are the options. So when a provider signs off on a result received from an interface, the patient's enrolled in the portal, and the added tracking functionality will automatically track and identify when a patient's result is sent to the portal. This is dependent on configuration, and the patient must be enrolled in the portal for this to work as designed. So again, this is the second level that we were talking about, but it's not 100% for all patients because again, the rules must be followed. The patient must have the portal, and you have to configure this in order for it to be functional. So once you've signed this and you've been tracking, what you'll see now is you can now have these sign-off tracking comments. So you can indicate that anything that's happened while you're going through the sign-off and the PAQ, you can now see the task was directed and created by the individual who's creating the task. You can order an AFP maternal screen sent to the patient portal for test patient, and then you can see the results sent to the patient portal. And then finally, this is just some more testing comments to let you see how these comments can come back and forth. One of the things that's also important to keep in mind is while this is, now there are some things that you can see, source and PAQ. One of the questions we had is while this is something, this particular functionality was introduced in 5.9, what you can see is that it appears to us to be retroactive because of the fact that the dates in this particular example we're using were prior to the implementation of 5.9. So this is also really positive in terms of when we were testing this out. I think this is really great functionality that's been added with some of the updates and items that NextGen has been putting in and becoming more and more present in terms of how to track these type of activities. So now we're going to move to follow-up orders.
Perfect. Thank you, Cindy. I could go ahead and give you a small break here and grab this section.
Yeah, and I apologize, Lindsay. My mic just went out all of a sudden. So Lindsay is going to be taking over on the follow-up orders and moving to that phase. So I appreciate you're jumping in here for a while, Lindsay.
No problem. So we're actually going to go ahead and take a brief look at new functionality added in the 5.9.8.4 upgrade for follow-up orders. So while we know this isn't part of what we would traditionally consider closing the order loop, it follows the same idea, and we felt it was important to include for you guys. So with follow-up orders, we know that an order is placed by clinical staff for the patient to come back into the office. Now what's changed is that this follow-up order can be seen by the front office staff in practice management, and once an appointment is scheduled, the office staff can update it in the EHR. So to give you all a better understanding, we have a screenshot of the appointment book where you can see follow-ups entered in the EHR will now be visible on that recall waitlist tab. And that blue push pin icon lets users know there's a follow-up order. So previously, when a provider entered a follow-up order in the EHR, you couldn't see it in PM. Now you can. This is huge. Before, you would either have to send a task, or you would even maybe have to rely on the patient to tell the front desk staff, which isn't always the safest, most reliable way. With this new functionality, when users schedule a follow-up appointment, they would go to the recall tab and see the order right there. The user would then schedule the follow-up visit based on the order. And once the appointment was scheduled, they can actually right-click on the follow-up order and auto-update the order in the EHR with the appointment information. So in my mind, this is effectively closing the loop on the order and letting the clinical staff know the appointment has been made. So we do have a very short demo of this workflow as well. It will walk the user through identifying and updating an EHR follow-up order, as well as highlighting some important tips and tricks to ensure this process is successful.
Users now have the ability to view follow-up orders that were placed in the EHR in the practice management application. So this allows the schedulers who have to schedule these follow-up orders to see the order without having to leave PM. So I can see here when I'm in EHR and orders management that I have a follow-up order for this patient. It tells me with the provider and for what time frame. So if I jump over to practice management and open the appointment book, I would schedule my appointment like I normally would. And then when I select my patient, you'll notice that on the recall/waitlist tab, there's a blue push pin. So this is where you will find a new section called follow-ups. So this is going to show me an exact same follow-up order that I saw on the EHR side. So as a scheduler, I know who the follow-up visit should be with, for what reason, and what the time frame should be. So what I would do is, as a scheduler, I would select the date and time that's within the time frame that works for the patient, and I would schedule the visit like normal. But you'll notice if I try to right-click on the follow-up order before I hit OK, that my update KBM with PM appointment date is grayed out. And that is because I haven't actually saved this appointment yet. So I need to click OK. So now that my appointment is saved, you can open it. So you can either double click or right click and select open. And then I'll notice back on my recall/waitlist tab, I see that same follow-up order. And now I can right click and I can select update KBM with the PM date. So one thing to note is you'll notice that there was no confirmation, nothing popped up letting me know that it did flow over into EHR. So then I would just say OK. And then now when I go back into EHR, and if I close out of this and reopen it to refresh it, you notice here for this follow-up visit that my appointment date and time has now been filled in. So that way any of the users on the EHR side, they don't have to go into PM to see if that visit was actually scheduled or to learn the date and time. They can see it listed here. And then also if I come back to PM and reopen that appointment and come back to the recall waitlist tab, I'll see here under that follow-up order the appointment date and time listed here. This allows any of the other schedulers to see that the follow-up visit has been scheduled for this order and it's not outstanding for that patient, so they don't need to schedule another visit.
All right, so now that we've completed both of the recorded demos, I want to talk a little bit about how we've taken the closing of the loop using any of these methods will provide better and more reliable care for your patients. While we've talked about a number of different things, and maybe not all of these were considered in terms of the documentation. If you go out to Success Community and Google it, we felt all of these were comparable methodologies so that you could actually move forward and bring your patients full circle regardless of how you're moving through your orders. So, and I hope you've enjoyed the webinars and the demonstrations that we were able to do. It's like something new we've tried. But as we move forward in terms of using this technology, I just wanted to bring it all to you and let you see all of the options that are now available to you. So if you're uncertain where your practice stands, let iTenant help. We can help you by assessing your current readiness, providing recommendations, and implementation of new processes and procedures. Next steps could be visit us at itentive.com, sign up for our informative webinars and blog, consider our 3-day fixed price on-site consultations. These consist of clinical workflow, revenue cycle, and front office, technology and performance, and then you could test drive our products, Refund Manager, ChartGuard, and we'll be looking at some new ones we'll be introducing in the near future. So now let's move on to questions.
Thanks, Cindy, and thanks, Lindsay, for that presentation. For clarity purposes, and due to the high volume of questions, we've actually re-recorded this questions part so as to provide you with more complete information. Additionally, helping provide answers to these questions is Adam Boron, Solutions Manager at iTentive. He's been helping clients with this new functionality and is a great resource. Okay, so first question. This is for the 5.9 upgrade only, correct?
I can take that one. So this functionality actually was introduced in 5.8 UD3, but certainly it's still available in 5.9.8.4 and versions moving forward.
Thanks, Adam. Next question. Has anyone been able to link a document, office note, transmitted through NextGen Share to an order placed through a referral template?
I can take that one also. So although documents can be received as a CCDA or PDF from NextGen Share, anything that is received from NextGen Share cannot be linked or completed from the PAQ or from document management. So that means an office note received as a CCDA can be incorporated into the patient's chart, however, would not be linked to the original referral order. The user can mark that the consult was completed by manually editing the referral order to specify it was performed and include the date and time of the appointment. Although time-consuming, the user could also print out the CCDA received through NextGen Share and scan it into document management to then link to the referral order. So essentially, any order ordered from the referral template can be completed in the PAQ or document management if the result/consult was scanned into document management.
Thanks, Adam. Next question. Can you see the documents in the order management template when you link it?
I can go ahead and grab that one, Chelsea. So you won't actually see the documents. You're going to see a comment that says see scan document in the order management template, and that's going to be under the interpretation column. I do want to note here, if it was an order that came in from an interface, that interpretation column would actually say see module instead of see scan document. So that's a good way to actually differentiate, but no, you would not actually see the document.
Thanks, Lindsay. Next question. Is there a way to have a CCDA sent from within EHR via Share for all consult notes generated so the specialist can easily send their notes back to the referring doctor?
I can go ahead and get this one as well. Absolutely. Any document or scanned image can be sent with the CCDA via NextGen Share. The user has the ability to specify the consult notes that they wish to send back to the referring provider. Do want to note this is going to be a manual process of selecting the consult notes, but it absolutely can be done.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Next question. Why is there only KBM available as the default source for referrals?
So we want to keep in mind here what the default source is. And the default source is the most common location that the orders are placed. So since referrals are only supported in the NextGen KBM, the system defaults this field for you. So really it's just kind of saving the user time here and defaulting that option for you.
Great, thank you. Next question. Did I hear correctly, you can only unlink an order from the orders module?
That is correct. You can only unlink scanned documents from orders from the orders module. You cannot unlink any orders that were placed from the KBM. So keep that in mind. If there's a mistake made or anything like that, this unlinking process can actually only be done from scanned documents from orders in the orders module.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Next question. The image can only be seen from the orders module even if you connect to the KBM. Can you also access the image from the orders template or other location within the KBM?
So if the order was placed from the orders module, then you can see the image in the orders module. If it was ordered in the KBM, for example, from the referrals template or any other templates, you would not actually be able to see the document when you're in the templates. You would see a status that says see scanned document. So you would need to go into the patient history toolbar where it's scanned in order to see it.
Great, thanks, Adam. Next question. What order class do the orders need to be shown in EPM? Is it OV?
Yes, I can take this one also. So a follow-up order that's visible in practice management. So that order is actually placed from the follow-up pop-up in the KBM, so either from the My Plan or a couple other places that you can actually order that. That order class field is OV in Template Editor.
Cool, thank you. And it looks like this is our last question. Is the completed date of the test automatically populating patient care guidelines?
I can take that one also. Yeah, so the completed date does show that the test was completed under the last completed column in the care guidelines template. There are a couple things that you want to definitely keep in mind though. So the completed date will be the date that the user closed the loop or linked the order to the result. You can manually change the date in care guidelines to reflect the date that the test was actually completed. So that way the last completed date shows when the test was performed rather than when you actually received it, just so that way it's a little more accurate.
Lovely. Thank you, Adam. And Lindsay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that we see you at the next one, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.